Nate, have you seen that there may well just be an all-out war with Russia? A giant war with the bear, the Russian bear.
All right, you've got my attention.
No, it's just a thing. I personally, okay, before we get into this, just it's been in the news a bit, isn't it? Russia, war with Russia and Europe, and the United States' relationship with NATO and all that sort of thing. First thing I'll say off the bat is I honestly, and I might, and history might prove me wrong. This video might date terribly badly. In 5-10 years' time, you could dig this video out and point out how terribly wrong I was. But I don't think so. And I think that Putin and Russia, I really don't think in the 2020s they've got designs on rolling tank divisions through Belarus, Romania, Hungary, what used to be East Germany, into Estonia and Latvia and all these places, Poland, that Putin wants to occupy Poland. I just simply don't believe that narrative. Now, people, and I've said similar things before, and you always get someone in the comments saying I'm being paid by the Kremlin or something crazy like that.
Wait, just quickly, just super quickly. Yeah. We released a video not like 2 days ago at time of recording this. It's just titled "Ukraine is corrupt," and we were just reporting that Zelensky's top aide quit, resigned, right? Because his corruption scandal, and someone was like, "This is Russian propaganda." It's like, what? Are you fucking mad?
Yeah, mental.
Are you meant like what is a BBC article we were talking about? And they love Ukraine. Like, it's just people get a perspective, guys watching this. Get a bloody perspective.
It's a classic thing, though. You say something that's sort of anti-Ukrainian, you're accused of being pro-Russian. Or the other way around. I've actually had the other way around. I've done a number of segments where we talk about, on Lotus Eaters mainly, where we talk about Palestine, Hamas, and, Israel and the IDF, all that sort of thing. And whoever's talking about making any sort of point that's sort of anti-Hamas, you get accused of being a pro-Zio shill. Yeah. And the other way around, just make any sort of point that is against Israel, you'll get someone else saying you're a terrorist, an Islamo-terrorist apologist.
Yeah.
So okay, that's what it is. That's what the internet is. If you're going to be a content creator, you absolutely have to just let that be water off a duck's back, because it just is what it is. So whatever. But so recently in the news here, Putin just talking about war with Europe if it happens. Because to be fair, imagine from Russia's point of view, from the Kremlin's point of view, it would seem like, wouldn't it, that Europe, NATO, and the United States have done more or less everything they can, sort of actual boots on the ground. And in some cases, there are actually some special forces boots on the ground. Done quite a lot to really mess with your program, right? Given Ukraine loads and loads and loads of stuff. And it's not just Ukraine as well, right? It's a much, much bigger, wider thing than that, isn't it? I mean, for example, that pipeline, the German pipeline that was sabotaged. Yeah, all sorts of things. Like loads and loads of sanctions against Russian interests and assets all over the place. So, okay. People do ask Putin fairly regularly, like, what would you do if NATO, started properly, taking out your aeroplanes in the skies above Ukraine? Or what would you do if NATO just fully, explicitly, or even the United States or something, unilaterally just started sending in the Marines? Not that the United States have said they would, or NATO have said they would. They haven't. They've explicitly ruled that out, and they keep doing so. So that's something at least. But what if, let's say, just completely hypothetically, what if Germany actually sent tanks in to start shooting at your tanks in the Donbass? Right, and Putin has always said, well, I suppose he's got to say, really, isn't he? He can't be seen to be weak. That is truly something that he sort of can't do on a political level. He's always said, no, we're ready for it. Let's rock and roll. Oh, you want to bring it on, right? So, but then, so now to us, that just looks or is really bellicose, isn't it? That's he is then saber rattling. It's not like he appears to be. He is at that point, right? So it's a dangerous, delicate game because, of course, remember, Russia's got the biggest nuclear arsenal in the world. If it ever came to that, people talk about war in Europe, war with Russia over Poland, war with Russia over Estonia or Belarus or whatever. Well, are you forgetting they've got nukes and they could make they could create a nuclear winter? Like, so, okay. Let's see what Putin says here. He says, we are not planning to fight Europe. I have said this 100 times. But if Europe suddenly decides to wage war against us and starts it, we are ready right now. There can be no doubt about that. The question is, if Europe starts a war with us, I believe that very quickly, and this is not Ukraine, with Ukraine we act in a surgical, careful way, you understand, right? It is not war in the full modern sense of the word. If Europe chooses to start a war, the situation can very quickly reach a point where there will be no one left for us to negotiate with. Right. And so, okay. So that's in the news cycle at the moment. He said that very recently. So just want to talk about that. It's like, in one way, you can say that's very aggressive. That's very bellicose. That's very saber rattly. He's saying, oh, I'm ready to rock and roll right now. Oh, you want to rock and roll? Let's go, baby. Right? On one level, he's doing that. He's saying that. You can make that argument. But on another level, right, you can say that it's simply a reaction to reality. You can't say much else. And it's not like it's not true as well. You know, if NATO or he just says Europe, or the translation there says he says Europe. If we did start a war, I mean, imagine I really can't imagine it, but if European forces, one way or another, tried to do a regime change, tried to do an armored drive to Moscow, like Army Group Center in 1941, if something like that happened, yeah, of course he'd be ready to rock and roll. Of course he would have to be ready to threaten to use the big one. So in that sense, he's not being overly bellicose or anything. He's just saying what he would have to do. But I don't know. I think it's interesting, the idea of an endless Cold War with Russia. You know, the idea that the Cold War ended in 1989 when the Berlin Wall came down, or in 1991 when the Soviet Union finally collapsed and they became Russia again, and that the Cold War is over now, and Russia are just simply no threat on any level, and that, you know, no, that's not the case. But do they always have to be the boogeyman, the endless boogeyman? I mean, I know Victoria Nuland would like that. I know some actors in the Pentagon and the State Department would like that. Someone like Keir Starmer seems to want that to be the case, or whatever, or Rishi Sunak before him, or whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Again, that's if you believe what I believe, which is the Russians actually don't want to occupy all of Eastern Europe and big chunks of Eastern Scandinavia. I mean, what are your thoughts and feelings when you see Putin say stuff like that? We're ready to go to war with Europe. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, is he ready? I don't know. I mean, probably on a nuclear level. You can see this next video here. It's like, you know, how ready are you for nuclear war? And he's like, yeah, technically ready. It's like, well, I believe that. I believe that Russia is technically ready. They have, as you say, incredibly large amount of nukes, right? So yeah, they are technically ready for nuclear war. Do they want nuclear war? No, probably not. Probably not. I'm probably not. I reckon probably not. Do they want, a war on multiple fronts? Right, the Ukraine war and plus a full-blown European war? Probably not. Probably not. 100% certain? No. But logic, like an educated guess, probably not great time for them to do a war on all out, on multiple fronts. I can't imagine it would be a great position for them to be in. So him saying this, yeah, I mean, as you say, like he's posed the question, isn't he? What would you do if this? What would happen if this? It's like, well, he can't. Russia is built on strength, right? Like it's a completely different culture. It is a different culture to us. They respect strength. He is who he is, and this is not me saying I respect him in any way, shape, or form. He's a dictator because he's strong, right? Can you imagine all of his oligarchs sitting under him, and he's like, and he starts showing huge amounts of weakness? Yeah, no, yeah, he'll get replaced. Like internally, someone will try and replace him, let alone externally. So he has to appear strong. So it makes sense that would be his response. It makes perfect sense. So yeah, I mean, I and also as well, the other countries are not ready for a war either. Like Europe's not ready for a war. The UK's not ready for a war. But going back to what you said about, the boogeyman, Russia constantly being a boogeyman. It's like, of all the people you could have made your enemy, and granted, they're part of making themselves an enemy as well, right? Like obviously, their actions have contributed to being held at arm's length. Clearly, obviously, acknowledge that. But of all the people you're going to maintain as an enemy, Russia's a pretty bad one. You could have made them a friend, right? How many terror attacks have Russia done? Not a lot. Not a lot. How many people have they murdered? Recently. Let's not say recently. How many people outside of the Ukraine war? How many people have they murdered just in cold blood? Not that many. Not that many. Right? Of all the countries, like that, you could have made them your friend. There are far worse people that you could have framed as your boogeymen that are actually your boogeymen if you needed them. As a country, if you needed a boogeyman, there's plenty of Middle East Muslims, etc. I mean, they are the proponents of terrorism in the world. That is just the case. They do go around raping and murdering people. That is just the case. Just on broad spectrum facts. Russia has insane amount of natural resources. We could have had cheap energy, cheap gas, cheap fuel, cheap oil. Like, I mean, there's so many things that we would benefit from having. They've got hot women that we would benefit from as having them as a friend, and yet we've just exiled them permanently. It's retarded.
Yeah,
and that's not me being an apologist. Obviously, that's just a cold hard fact.
Yeah,
and the women are not.
I agree. After the Cold War, or after the early 90s, let's say, it would have. It seems to me, it would have been and I'm talking on a global level, strategically better for the United States and her allies, like Britain, France, Germany, to have tried to have genuinely brought Russia into the fold of nations, and right. So it's like Chechnya are the problem, not Russia. Right? Yeah, make countries like Pakistan or Saudi Arabia or Nigeria or Somalia. They're truly the boogeymen of the world. Or even Iraq under Saddam. Right? I'm actually one of those people. That, well, anyway, I won't talk about Saddam and Iraq. That's a whole different story. It's just on the macro level. It would have been better for the whole world to have not tried to keep that Cold War organ grinding. That the Russians are the baddies that must always be confronted and undermined on every level. And it's a shame that we're still there, and it's a shame that because it does seem, this one last thing, a little bit of a rabbit hole, so I won't go into any real detail, but it does seem now that a lot of stuff that went down in Ukraine in 2014 was just completely contrived artificially. Completely contrived artificially by Western or largely American interference and all sorts of intelligence services shenanigans and false flags and all sorts of shit. Basically stirring up the hornet's nest to screw with Russia. Was there any need to do that, really? When you zoom out and look at the sweep of history, the whole sweep of history, was that good? Was that a good move? I don't think so. Anyway, there you go.